All right, y'all. Let's talk about UFC 121. Thoughts on the fights overall. I'll explain. Thoughts on Tito. Tito looked really good first round. Came out very aggressive. That's what I love about Tito. He is an exciting fighter, unlike what most people say. He's very aggressive. He's usually the first one to throw a punch, first one to throw a kick, first one to engage any action. He starts right off by kicking Matt Hamill in the face. Goes right after him with punches. Stand up looked good. Even pulled off a spinning back fist. I was pretty impressed with Tito. Good leg kicks. He went for the head a lot of head kicks. But the bottom line is Tito got out wrestled. That's really what happened. Because in my opinion, Tito won the stand up battle. But Tito got out wrestled. He got taken down in the second. Was controlled for a couple of minutes. Got taken down in the third. Was controlled for a bit. And that's what won Hamill the fight. I don't think Tito looked awful. Tito's not getting knocked out unconscious, unlike some people we know, like, Chuck Liddell, who's getting absolutely destroyed and completely knocked out cold and not even knowing what happened. Tito isn't getting knocked out. Out of all of his losses that he's had, he got dropped by Machida with a knee. That's really it. Nobody else has done any damage or done anything really to him. And so I think when you look at his record and you're like, well, he hasn't won since 2006 and all. Well, he's only fought, what, 5 times since then? And, okay, the Rashad fight was a draw. Most people believe he won. I thought he won. And Rashad's the #1 contender right now. The Forrest Griffin fight, I think you can give 2 rounds to Tito and one to Forrest, and you could actually say that Tito won that fight. If Tito didn't have such a horrible third round, then I think you definitely could say Tito won that fight. The Machida fight, he was in it for quite a bit. I mean, he was getting countered and stuff, but he wasn't getting knocked out. He wasn't getting dominated. He was getting frustrated because he was completely charging Machida, and Machida would just kind of dance around. But there wasn't a lot of damage that Machida did. Machida did a very solid takedown. I'll definitely give him that. But Tito was able to land some shots. In the third round, he got him up against cage, pounded his body real good. And then he got dropped with a knee, and then Machida got caught in the triangle, but Tito did okay. I'm not seeing a performance of Tito just think, my God, this guy is awful and he needs to be cut. But I don't know if Tito deserves his paycheck anymore. I mean, he's getting paid $250,000, which is mostly any fighter out there. And he's not even semi-main eventing anymore. And he just lost to Matt Hamill, who questionably I don't think you could really say is in the top 10 in the light heavyweight division. I think if Matt Hamill would have knocked Tito out, then you could definitely cut Tito. But I don't think that Tito looked awful, and I think that Tito, if he would join a camp, if he would not dictate his own pace in Big Bear and all that other stuff, I think Tito would be a much better fighter. I think if Tito was in a Greg Jackson type camp or Extreme Couture or something like that, Tito would be very tough to beat. If his wrestling was up to par with some of the top fighters, I mean, the damage that he would do on the floor to guys would be brutal. I mean, he would destroy guys. But he can't get guys to the ground anymore because his wrestling isn't that strong. And stand-up wise, yes, I don't think it's bad at all. He looks like a legit kickboxer now. But the problem is he just doesn't have a lot of power. And I don't know why. The guy's an absolute beast. He's huge. But his punches just don't do a lot of damage. So I think that's where he's at in the crossroads. I think if Tito can get you down, though, man, you're done data. You're in deep, deep trouble. But if he can't get you down, and especially if you can out-wrestle Tito, more than likely you're going to win the fight. I want to see Tito and Stephan Bonnar. I think Stephan Bonnar has a hard time with the takedown. I think that Tito's more than willing to throw down with him. I think it'd be an extremely exciting fight. And I think that if Tito wins, and I think he deserves to stay. If he loses, then he should be cut. Tito's been through hell, guys. I mean, all the stuff that's gone through with the fact that he's been fighting since he's 22, and he's been through divorces and contract holdouts and losing a ton of friends and dealing with dating a porn star and having twins with her and her always being emotional and then her dad dying while he was at camp. I mean, him being arrested, being accused that he beat her. always now he's wondering if he's got his job or not. I mean, Tito's been with all the surgeries, the neck surgery, the back surgery, the blown ACLs. All this stuff adds up, guys. And you know what? Maybe it is time for Tito to go. He's beaten up, man. I mean, he's not the stuff that Tito's been through. An average 35-year-old man should not have to go through. But you know, Tito's a warrior. Tito has a ton of heart, and I don't think he wants to hang it up. I think that's why he had those surgeries. It's because he doesn't want to be a quitter, and he still wants to fight. And so he feels healthy, he feels good, and I say he should get one more fight. If the UFC cuts him, they cut him, and I don't really know if he'll want to go Strikeforce. I think he's kind of burned out on the whole negotiating thing and all that stuff, and I think maybe he'll just take it to heart that he's done. Doesn't really sound like the Tito I know. He'll probably go to Strikeforce, but Strikeforce doesn't really favor his style. They don't allow elbows to the ground. And I don't know. I just don't think it'd be a good fit. But we'll see what happens. Jake Shields and Campman. I thought Shields dominated the fight, even being gassed out. And the reason he was gassed out is because he cut 20 pounds the day of the fight, or the day before the fight, which is absolutely retarded. He put his body through a mess that didn't have to be. Jake Shields normally has pretty good cardio. I think that the 170 cut took a lot out of him. I think he'll be fine by next time. And I think him and GSP is an interesting fight. Both are very good at wrestling. Jake Shields is way ahead of him on jiu-jitsu. So it's an interesting fight. I think, honestly, if GSP wants to win that fight, he needs to keep the fight standing. I think he would destroy Jake Shields if he just kept it standing. But we'll see what happens. Basically, I'm just thankful he's not going to fight John Fitch. John Fitch is fighting Jake Ellenberger, and thank God for that, because John Fitch and Jake Shields would put any man to sleep. So we'll just leave it at that. Brock Lesnar and Kane. This is kind of what I've been saying all along, is the bottom line is Brock thinks he's the baddest man on the planet, didn't really respect the MMA game, thought that he could just go in there with his freakish strength, his freakish athletic ability, and just go in there and dominate guys. Well, what happened is Brock gets in the cage, and he's like, well, you know what, I'm the baddest man on the planet, I'm just going to bum rush this guy, just like I did Heath Herring, and I'm just going to go right after him. Well, he does that, and guess what happens? Dead stop. Dead stop. Kane stops him right in his tracks. Then Brock's thinking, oh crap, well, okay, I'm just going to start throwing haymakers at this guy. You know, he does that, still nothing. Well, then Brock's thinking, okay, well, I'll just take this guy down. I'm going to take him down, I'm going to beat the crap out of him, pound on him. Well, he takes him down, and then guess what? Kane gets back up. Well, then Brock's thinking, oh crap, well, what's happening here? Well, then guess what? Kane takes him down. And then I think after that, mentally, he's just thinking, oh crap, I'm in for a fight. This guy is way better than I thought. And then Brock gets back up, they're up against the cage, and Kane hits him just with a little bitty uppercut while Brock's kind of shooting in, and Brock, like, afterwards does, like, some type of breakdance move all the way clear on the other side of the cage. Kane goes on there and knees him in the face. Brock looks like he doesn't want anymore. Kane gets on top of him, just pounds him out, does not pull a Shane Carwin, just throw punches to throw punches. He makes sure that all his punches land, make sure he's very accurate, and you know, we have a new heavyweight champion in Cain Velasquez. And I personally think that Brock Lesnar will fight again. Will he become champion again? I don't know, man. I don't know. Because I don't like the way Brock trains. Brock dictates the pace, where he goes, who he trains with. He's not going to no training camp. He's going to train by his house, have certain guys that he wants to come in. I don't see Brock Lesnar having hard sparring sessions, guys totally putting it on him, pushing the pace on him. I just don't see Brock improving that much to be a champion again. Brock is a beast, but Brock is green. Brock hasn't been in the game that long, and he's got a lot to learn, and I just don't know if he's willing to do it, especially since Dana White says he's had nothing but problems with Brock in the past couple of months. And all I can say, Dana, is if you think Tito Ortiz is a pain in the ass, wait till you deal with Brock Lesnar. Because this guy, once he gets used to something and it doesn't start working for him anymore, he just wants out. And that's what he did with the WWF. And once he's not the big show main event attraction that he is in the UFC right now, and his paydays start getting smaller and things aren't really working out contract-wise and all, he's going to have some big issues. And he wants to fight Roy Nelson. And in my opinion, Roy Nelson is a tough fight for Brock, because I think Roy can handle wrestling somewhat with him, and I think striking he might be ahead of Brock in striking. It's also a horrible image for Brock to lose to a fat guy. You've got some huge muscle-bound freak show guy going in there and fighting a fat guy, and he could lose. And I think it would be awful for Brock Lesnar if that happened. It would definitely drop his star power, but I'm also happy he wants to fight because I really don't want to see him fight Frank Mir. I heard he turned down the fight with Frank Mir. Thank goodness for that. Nobody wants to see that fight. I have no desire to see that fight. I promise you I wouldn't order that fight. It's a completely pointless fight. Frank Mir needs to fight somebody else. And sounds like we're going to get Brock Lesnar and Roy Nelson probably by like February, maybe March, something like that. So it should be an interesting fight, and that's really going to decide where Brock Lesnar's MMA career lies. So the merger with oh, hold on, before that, let's talk about Brock and Taker. Everybody wants to talk about Brock and Taker. Couple of things I've noticed off of that. This thing had like 2 million hits in 2 days. So what does that tell you about the pro wrestling business? For one, it tells you people still care. But for two, it tells you that they want a reason to care because they absolutely hate what they have now. And when they got a shot of Brock and Taker staring each other down, it brought them back to the old days. They got excited. They were like, oh my God, finally something good is going to happen in the wrestling world. Finally, we're going to get something cool, and Taker's going to face somebody that we never thought would happen. This is so great, yada, yada, yada. Hate to break it to you guys, but Dana White owns Brock Lesnar. He owns him. Brock can't wrestle. Brock can't fight. Brock can't do anything outside of the UFC, and he'd have to get everything consented by Dana White. I promise you that Brock Lesnar will not face The Undertaker at WrestleMania and lose. You think Dana White's going to want one of his top prospect fighters to lose to Undertaker at WrestleMania? It'll never happen. So give up on it. It's as good as dead. It was a PR stunt for the WWE to get interested, get some hype, get some interest going. But that's probably not what you're going to get. You're probably going to get Taker and Wade Barrett or some stupid crap like they always deliver now. And that's just the way that it's going to be. I'm sorry. The merger between WEC and UFC I think is absolutely fantastic. I think guys like Jose Aldo and Uriah Faber and Dominique Cruz and Donald Cerrone and Benson Henderson and guys like that will finally get the respect that they deserve because they're not WEC champions. If they become the champions, they're UFC champions, and that's a huge, huge difference. And it's just because of those three little letters, because people are so fickle-headed and all about, well, I only watch the UFC because the UFC is cool. When Strikeforce is going around and Dream and WEC, they only want to watch the UFC. Well, now these guys will get the respect that they deserve because people are going to be watching because it's the UFC and they're UFC champions. Not only that, you'll get guys that are fighting at 155 that probably shouldn't be fighting at 155 that'll drop to 145 because there's no shame in dropping anymore. Like guys like Tyson Griffin, I think would be perfect in the 145 division. You're going to get extremely exciting fights on every single UFC card now. You're going to get every pay-per-view will now have a championship on the line. I mean, it's perfect. It's a beautiful thing that happened. It made the UFC 10 times stronger, and people are like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal because the UFC's always on WEC. Well, moron, it is a big deal because of people like you that are stupid that think that, well, the WEC is just the WEC and the UFC is the UFC because nobody gives respect to the WEC because it had a different name, but it was always under the UFC banner. So now people can respect these small guys and really know how good they are. They can now know that Jose Aldo is top 10 pound for pound in the world, maybe even top 5. So I think it's huge, and I think that it makes the sport so much stronger and so much more dominant, and really the UFC is one organization away from taking over the complete MMA scene. So it's enormous, and it's going to be great for the fans. It's going to be great for the WEC fighters because they're going to get the publicity. They're going to get more money. It's fantastic. Couple things I want to talk about too is this stupid these guys like friends won't fight friends crap. You know, you're owned by the UFC, and the UFC's job is to put the best fighters in the world and see who is the best fighter in the world. So you take the number one guy and the number two guy, or whatever it is, the two number one guys, you have them fight, and you find out who the best in the world is. Now, if you're John Jones and Rashad Evans, you're going to fight. You cannot tell the UFC that you're not going to fight and then wait when they do own the whole MMA world and then you tell them you're not going to fight. Well, if they cut you, what do? You fight in Amarillo? You know, it's a completely different ball game. There's multiple camps now. They're saying we won't fight each other. John Fitch will move up to 185 to avoid fighting Josh Koscheck. Jake Shields says he'll never fight Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz. John Jones says he'll never fight Rashad Evans. The bottom line is this is a business. It's about making money. It's about displaying the best fights. And if you guys are the top in the division, then you have to fight. That's just the way that it is. You have no right to tell an owner how to run his business. You are a hamster on the machine is the bottom line. And if you don't want to do that, then you're going to be kicked off that machine. So I just think it's stupid. And I think that the UFC is making enough money now where there is no excuses. Guys should be able to fight their friends, beat their friends up, and move on, you know, because it's about putting on the best fights possible. And if John Jones and Rashad Evans is to determine the number one contender or determine who's the champion, then that fight should happen. Matt Hamill fought Rich Franklin. Matt Hamill fought Tito Ortiz. Tito fought Matt Hamill. I mean, that's what happens. Rampage fought Dan Henderson even though they were friends. There's a lot of friends that have fought. And, Josh Thompson and Gilbert Melendez are friends, and they freaking threw down, beat the living crap out of each other. It was an extremely exciting fight, and they're willing to do it again. So it's just silly to me. Go to a different camp for that one fight and then go back to your original camp or whatever the case may be, but you can't tell a business that you're not going to fight. So overall, fights are exciting. Fights are the UFC MMA world is as big as it's ever gotten. Pro wrestling's in even more trouble as it always has been, but it's just getting deeper and deeper water. And who knows what's going to happen. All I can say is enjoy the fights and follow me on my Twitter. I use my Twitter a lot. I have it on my phone, so I'm constantly updating things. And I talk about, the NFL and stuff that's going on in the NFL. I talk about MMA. I talk about pro wrestling. I do a forum spring where people ask me questions. And, all of that is accessed through my Twitter. And you guys want to know something about me, just ask away. Some questions are extremely bizarre, but some are very reasonable, and then some are just impossible to answer. If it's one of those questions, it's like, who do you think is the top 5 in this, or what do you think the greatest moment in this was, the greatest moment in MMA history, or the greatest moment in pro wrestling history, or who's the greatest pro wrestler of all time, or all this stuff. Ask me to do a video request or something like that, because I can't just answer a question like that. It's too long and detailed and in-depth, so think about that before you ask me a question, and follow me on my Twitter, and I'll catch you guys later.